3 men stood when an entire nation bowed. They were given a choice: bow or burn. But what happened next shocked a king and changed a kingdom forever.
In the ancient land of Babylon, during a time when kings ruled with absolute authority and nations were shaped by power and conquest, there lived 3 young men whose faith would one day echo through generations. Their names were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But these were not the names they were born with. They were Hebrews, young men from the land of Judah, taken captive when King Nebuchadnezzar conquered Jerusalem. Far from their homeland, stripped of their familiar surroundings, their language, and their culture, they were brought into a foreign palace where everything was different. The food, the customs, the beliefs, all centered around the gods of Babylon. Yet even in captivity, something about these young men stood out. They were disciplined, they were wise, and they carried themselves with a quiet strength that could not easily be explained. From the very beginning, they made a decision that would define their lives. They would remain faithful to their God, no matter where they were. Even when offered the rich foods of the king, they chose instead to honor their beliefs. Their commitment did not go unnoticed. In time, they rose in favor and were appointed to positions of authority within the Babylonian government. They served diligently, not out of fear, but with integrity. Now, King Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler of Babylon, was a powerful and ambitious man. His kingdom was vast, his army was strong, and his pride was immense. One day, the king decided to make a statement, a declaration of power that would remind everyone who truly ruled Babylon. He ordered the construction of a massive golden image, an idol that towered high into the sky, gleaming brilliantly in the sunlight. It could be seen from miles away, a shining symbol of power, of unity, and of unquestioned loyalty to the king. When the statue was completed, Nebuchadnezzar issued a decree. People from every nation, every language, and every region under his rule were commanded to gather for a grand ceremony. And at the sound of music, the horn, the flute, the lyre, the harp, and every kind of instrument, everyone was to fall down and worship the golden image. This was not a suggestion. It was a command. And anyone who refused would be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace of fire. The day of the ceremony arrived. The atmosphere was heavy, filled with tension. Officials, governors, princes, and people from every corner of the empire stood before the towering statue. The golden structure reflected the sun with blinding brilliance. Nearby, musicians prepared their instruments. There was excitement, but also fear, because everyone knew the stakes. Then, the music began. Instantly, a wave of movement swept through the crowd. Thousands of people dropped to their knees, bowing before the golden image. Heads lowered, hands stretched forward, but their hearts were filled with fear, not devotion. Yet, not everyone bowed. Amid the sea of submission, 3 figures remained standing: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They stood upright, unmoved, their eyes steady, their hearts firm. They knew the command. They understood the consequence. But they also knew who they were and whom they served. Their refusal did not go unnoticed. Certain officials, men who had long been jealous of these Hebrews, quickly seized the opportunity to accuse them. They hurried to the king. "O king, live forever," they said. "You have issued a decree that everyone must bow down and worship the golden image when the music plays, and whoever does not shall be thrown into the fiery furnace. But there are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men pay no attention to you, O king. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image you have set up." The words stirred the king's anger. Nebuchadnezzar was furious. His pride had been challenged, his authority questioned. How could these men, whom he himself had elevated, defy him so openly? Immediately, he ordered them to be brought before him. When they stood before the king, the tension in the room was thick. Nebuchadnezzar's voice thundered, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image I have set up?" For a moment, the king offered them another chance. "Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the music, fall down and worship the image I have made. But if you do not worship, you shall be thrown immediately into the burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands?" The question hung in the air, a challenge, a test of faith. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not hesitate. Their response was calm, respectful, yet unwavering. "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But even if he does not, be it known to you that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image you have set up." Their faith was not dependent on the outcome. Whether they lived or whether they died, they would remain faithful. This answer filled the king with uncontrollable rage. His face twisted with fury. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. The flames roared violently, shooting high into the air. Then, the strongest soldiers in his army bound the 3 men with ropes and carried them toward the fire. But the heat of the furnace was so intense that the soldiers themselves were consumed by the flames. And then, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown into the blazing furnace.
The fire roared, crackling with fierce intensity. From the outside, their fate seemed certain. But then, something extraordinary happened. King Nebuchadnezzar suddenly leaned forward, his eyes wide with shock. He stood up quickly. "Did we not throw 3 men bound into the fire?" he asked. "Yes, O king," they replied. But the king stared into the flames and said, "Look, I see 4 men walking in the fire. They are unbound and they are not hurt. And the 4th looks like a son of the gods." Inside the furnace, what should have been a place of destruction had become a place of divine presence. The flames could not harm them. Their bindings were gone. They were free, walking calmly in the midst of the fire. And they were not alone. A 4th figure stood with them, radiant, powerful, a divine presence among the flames. Overwhelmed, Nebuchadnezzar approached the furnace opening. "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out."
And to the amazement of everyone watching, the three men stepped out of the fire. The officials rushed forward, examining them closely. Not a single hair was burned. Their clothes were untouched. There was not even the smell of smoke on them. It was as though they had never been in the fire at all. The king stood in awe. "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego," he declared. "He has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him." And from that day forward, the king issued a new decree across Babylon. No one was to speak against their God, for no other God could rescue in such a way. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were promoted to even greater honor, but their story became something far greater than a tale of survival. It became a testimony of courage, of faith, and of trust in God, even in the fire. Because true faith is not only believing when life is easy. True faith stands firm when the world demands you bow. And sometimes, the greatest display of God's power is not avoiding the fire, but walking through it and coming out untouched.